An Unexpected Future by A Series on AO3. Episode 12, Chapter 12 Ordinary. You should let me join. Five whined as he kept pace with Aizawa's long strides, the both of them trailing behind the rest of the class as they made their way to the locker rooms. I'm strong enough. I can handle being in a hero class with the rest of them. No, Aizawa said resolutely as the last time Five had asked. Even if I wanted to let you train with the others. It's illegal for children under 15 to take part in a battle training exercise like this. Five didn't pout, because he was above pouting. Damn it! But he did sulk the rest of the way to the gym. He didn't even bother changing into his gym uniform as he passed through the boys' locker room to get to the training area. The stinging was eased a little bit, knowing that he'd be getting his own training later. Even if he somehow understood Nedzu even less than the first time they met. He wasn't sure if he believed Nedzu's story. It wasn't even a story, just an implication left for Five to fill in the gaps. And even if he was telling him the truth, just because he said he had Five's best intentions at heart, that didn't mean that he actually did. Rekdal often said he was doing what he did for their own good, and Five didn't see any evidence of that being true outside of the situations that Regnal had put them in himself. Whatever. Five wasn't going to waste this opportunity. He's going to spend the time watching these hero hopefuls and see what the future of heroics really was. The students emerged from the locker rooms in small groups, talking amicably amongst themselves, and genuinely looking excited or determined to be there. A number of them caught his eye and waved at him, which Five ignored, except for Suze, whom he gave a nod. Curiously, when he caught Midoriya staring at him, Midoriya quickly looked away, and not so subtly hid behind his tall friend in armor. Five didn't have time to raise an eyebrow at that before a strong blast of air made him take a steady step back. I am here to teach a class on heroics, All Might proclaimed after his flashy entrance, striking a pose. Five hadn't much chance to observe the man during the USJ fight, having been herded out of the building as quickly as possible by students and teachers alike. But he still couldn't miss the man's presence and power. He seemed much less impressive now, though, fumbling over note cards as he explained the exercise the class was about to perform. It sounded closer to a game to Five, with teams and a common but conflicting goal, and the bandaged Aizawa on standby to make sure none of them went overboard. I'm expelling anyone that makes me use my quirk today. While the students were getting ready in their designated spots, All Might and Aizawa accompanied Five to an outdoor observation platform where they could easily see all the students as they prepared for the exercise to start. There was never one particular moment that proved that Luther and Ben were the strongest amongst them. It simply was. Like how water is wet, and that Pogo, however kind, would never directly disobey one of Father's orders. It was an overwhelming sort of power that Luther and Ben had, in different ways, and it forced the rest of them to sprint and plot ways to keep up. Five and Allison were particularly good at this, using every edge they could find to propel themselves forward to their own goals. Five could outsmart Luther, use his size against him, and hit him where he's the weakest, only doing a fraction of damage it'll do on someone else. Sometimes, Five would even squeak in a win that way. But even he couldn't do much in the face of the sheer awe-inspiring destructive power of Ben. Looking out at Class 1A train, it felt like he was staring down at a stampede of Bens. It was overwhelming. These untrained children, with no combat experience save for what they managed in the attack Five appeared in, easily outclassed all his siblings. Five had talked a big game with Bakugo the day before, but just watching the boy move, Five knew he couldn't teleport fast enough to avoid Bakugo's explosions. Luther couldn't hold a candle compared to the strength that Midoriya displayed, And even Ben would be jealous of the amount of control the bird-headed boy had over the demon coming out of his chest. Five's knees trembled, his grip tightened on the observational railing to compensate. He'd known for a while that having powers was the norm now. Every person he saw in the streets or in the halls had them, but only standing here, watching them, did he finally understand the depth of that reality. With a year of training, every single one of these wannabe heroes would outclass him. He wasn't special. He wasn't strong. Every moment of his miserable 13 years of life was for nothing, because now he was nothing but ordinary. The word all but slapped him in the face. Was this what Vanya had been feeling all this time? Forced to sit on the sidelines, watching these amazing people fight and grow with excitement and fear, and ambition festering in her stomach, under her skin, buzzing, as the best she could do was just support them on their journey. How many times was she hurting as Five rattled off another formula or theory on how to time travel? How many times was her quiet support laced with bitterness? Now, Five's arms were trembling too, and the realization was too much. He couldn't stay here, or he'll collapse. Blindly reaching for his quirk, he pulled himself away from the powerful children and watchful adults. But he couldn't run away from himself. His knees hit the cold floor, and his hands followed as he tried and failed to steady his breathing. All this time, one of his best friends had been hurting, and he never realized. What kind of self-absorbed asshole was he? And what did it say about him that the part of him worrying about Vanya was smaller than the aching large void left in the absence of being special? He wanted to throw up. Instead, a strangled sob escaped his throat, and he curled into a tight ball, clinging his knees to his chest, unable to stop the stinging of his eyes as he gasped for breath. He hated this. He hated being weak. He hated being ordinary. He hated that he was broken enough to show it. He wanted to go home. He wanted to go home and give Vanya a hug and kill their father for forcing them to fight when they would have just been fine having childhoods and learning how to be heroes when they're older. He wanted to get his siblings far away from that suffocating house and that suffocating man as much as possible. But he can't, because he was so stupid he got himself stuck here. Five startled as the sound of a heavy door opening echoed across the cement tiles and metal lockers. His breath hitched, clutching at his sleeves and reaching for his quirk, when Aizawa's voice called out a hurried, "Hargreaves." Five let out an involuntary sniffle, and the mere act of exposing that chip in his armor was enough to set Five off again. A full-body sob ranking through his chest as he curled himself even more tightly around his knees. He fumbled for his quirk, but it slipped through his fingers as easily as the tears fell down his face. He could practically hear his father's voice yelling for him to get up, number 5. Do you think the world would simply stop turning simply because you're upset? You must control your emotions. Five refused to look up, but he could hear Aizawa kneeling next to him. What happened? Are you injured? He felt like his heart was forcibly ripped out of his chest and trampled under a horse-drawn carriage. But he had a feeling that wasn't what Aizawa meant. He shook his head pathetically, his arms trembling. Okay. Aizawa shifted next to him, moving so that he was sitting on the ground with his back against the wall next to Five. Just breathe, okay? Deep breaths. Five took a shuddering breath in and let a shaky breath out. That's good. Do it again. Five did. Good. Can you tell me what happened? What happened was that Five and his siblings were bought from their families like cattle and raised as child soldiers. And it was completely unnecessary. What the hell? Five reached out and grabbed Aizawa's sleeves above the cast. White knuckles as Five raised his head and looked into the man's black eyes. Aizawa was as hard to read as always, but his eyes looked a lot like Vanya's did every time Five came back from special training with their father. Their owner? Why? Five's voice was hoarse from crying. He let his knees fall to the floor as he turned to face Aizawa. Why is it that they all get to be so good right out of the gate, huh? They're all greenhorns. Most of them don't even know how to move their bodies properly to fight. They don't have any experience. Why are they so strong? What was the point in us going through all that shit if we could have just shown up as teenagers and been just as good? It's not fair. Even as Five's voice broke, he knew the answer. He was raised by a selfish, egotistical man whose sight and ambitions were set somewhere in the stars. What did it matter if he destroyed a few kids? So long as they fulfilled his exclusive, upstate objective. What a joke. He was crying again, this time for the people that he and his siblings could have been, but would never have the chance to. He let himself fall forwards and rest his forehead on Aizawa's shoulder, just clinging to the man's sleeve like a lifeline. You're right. It's not fair. Aizawa said, slowly, once Five's crying quieted. I don't know the details of what you and your siblings have gone through, but from what little you've told us, you've been facing far too much for far too long. It doesn't matter. Five bit out, stomping down on the swelling of validation in his chest. Because I'm going back there, and I'm gonna have to dance to that man's tune all over again. We all will. Aizawa quieted at that, probably because he recognized the inability as well as Five did. Five used the chance to catch his breath and wipe his eyes on his sleeve. At the very least, Aizawa started, causing Five to raise his head. We can give you the tools you need to survive better when you go back. Skills you could teach your siblings, and make it easier to get out from under his thumb. Because that was the best they could do, went unsaid. Right. Five finally released Aizawa's sleeve, leaning against the wall again. Wouldn't that interfere with your precious timeline? Aizawa shrugged. Wouldn't know. I haven't checked the history books. For all we know, you were meant to come here. Five blinked. Something about that, sinking in his mind. But all he could focus on now was how stiff and crusty his eyes felt right after crying. He kept himself from rubbing his eyes again, though. Now that he could properly see, he was sitting on the floor of the boys' changing room. After another few moments of silence, Aizawa pointed out, You look tired. Imagine that. Come on. Aizawa nudged Five's shoulder with his arm. I've got a sleeping bag in the office. Five raised an incredulous eyebrow at him. A sleeping bag? Really? Really? And you're just gonna let me, what, sleep the rest of the day? Until we head home, sure, why not? There's a couch in the teacher's lounge, if you want to lay down. Though I usually like curling up under my desk where people can't see me. Five stared at him, but at the end of the day, he was just too exhausted to try and fight him on it. Despite how wrong it felt, neither Aizawa or Yamada had lied to him yet. There was no reason to think this is where they would start. Lead the way. Okay. I didn't think that the author would outright, not outright say, because, they didn't outright say his dilemma, but hold up, there's a meowing cat on my door. I hope you can still hear me. I'm opening my door. Hi, Storm. Hi. Or not. You can walk away. I opened the door for you. Thank you. Welcome. Walk in like this is your house. Because it is. Because this isn't my room. This is Storm's room. Okay. As I was saying, I didn't think that the author was going to outright say that, stuff like, what's the point, why are they so strong? What's the point of us going through all that shit if we could have just showed up as teenagers and been just as good? It's not fair. For him, seeing that these teens who have absolutely no experience being stronger means that all he went through, or like that one TikTok audio, all that trauma was not good trauma. It was just trauma. For him, he thought, I'm special. Therefore, everything I am enduring is for a reason. Everything that I'm going for is because I'm special. Me and my siblings are special. There's no one else like us, and we are holding the weight of the world. We're the only ones who could save people the way we do. So for him to go into the future and find out that so many other people can do it even better than him from the start, it would be infuriating. It would be infuriating. Because you're sitting there and you're thinking, wow, so everything I went for was for nothing. Everything I went for was for nothing. And it's sitting there and not only just realizing I'm not special, right? Because it's one thing being told you're special your whole life and then finding out you're not special. It's like prodigies, right? Or, for example, gifted kids, right? The kids that go into the gifted program. I'm special. They go through their whole life being told that you're smart, you're special, you're one of a kind. Or prodigies as well, right? Or just really, really smart kids, right? So there comes a point in life when they realize, or they go into, a point where they're head and toes with someone else, or a lot of other people, and they realize, I'm not special. And they fall apart. Because for Five, his whole identity is him being special. Him having these powers that no one else had. So imagine that shatter and being literally told indirectly, but directly, but not directly, because it's not like someone's telling him you're ordinary. It's him seeing it. I am ordinary compared to these people. It is crushing. To add on top of that trauma, like, the whole I'm special, therefore everything I'm going through, all the heartache, all the bad, horrible training, all the abuse is for something. I'm special, therefore I have to go through all of this for the good. And to find out that you're not special and all of that was just trauma, that shit shatters someone. And God, sorry, I kind of went hard on this chapter, if you couldn't tell. Sorry, rent is due. But I had fun doing this chapter. I didn't necessarily cry. My heart goes out to Five, and I'm really starting to like you, E-Series. You have a really interesting writing style, and I really like how you portray Five. I can really tell that you understand trauma and the implements. And mind you, I'd like to remind you, this is a 13-year-old boy who just found out that all his trauma was for fucking nothing. He is not special. And there's people out there that are better than him. Better than him. Right? It's like when you learn the piano and you're super happy about it, but then you find out that like a 5-year-old can do it better. I always remind myself, it's just to humble myself out there. Just like, oh, I think I'm amazing at this, right? I am amazing at this. There's a 5-year-old out there doing it better than me, right? That's what I say about my reading. I am good at reading. I'm doing so wonderful for someone who has dyslexia and, English isn't their first language. I'm doing so great at reading, except I know for a fact there's a 5-year-old somewhere out there in the world who is better at reading than me. And to said 5-year-old, teach me your ways. Anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.